Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 5, the last official day in our Exploring Pranayama series. So, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative and beneficial. Again, these are not all one size fits all practices, but practices to be taken depending on how you are feeling, how your current constitution is, how your consistent constitution is, Prakriti and Vikriti, if you're familiar with those terms in Ayurveda. If you have felt that any of these practices have been upsetting, it's entirely possible these practices are not appropriate for you at this point in time. If you found any of these to be extremely beneficial, I'm glad, and I hope you continue to practice them based on how you feel. You may choose to take one practice for 40 days, which is a typical sadhana, a typical duration of practice, and maybe after those 40 days, you feel a profound and lasting change, depending on which technique you are practicing. If at the end of these 40 days, you feel like one of these practices has sent you too far in the opposite direction, maybe you practiced it too long as far as duration every day. Maybe you took several cooling practices or calming practices at the same time, and we went past that balanced state and kind of into a too cool, too lethargic kind of state. So we are always in flux depending on the situation we find ourselves, depending on the season. So do know that these practices, well, the yogic breathing, the belly diaphragmatic breathing, that's something you can practice all the time. But Chandra Vedana versus Surya Vedana and Kapalabhati and Bhastrika versus what we'll be doing today, our cooling breaths, that's where we might find the more potent techniques. Definitely aren't supposed to be practiced for long periods of time or all periods of time. Really just until whatever dis-ease you've been feeling or whatever symptom has been alleviated, or once we are back to that balanced, even state, your balanced, even state, because it could be different for me or someone else. So let us get into our cooling breaths. I have 3 for you today. The first 2 are really very similar. They have subtle differences. However, I believe it is a third of the population cannot do this with their tongue. So we will be either taking Shitali or Shitkari, depending on if you can roll your tongue or not. And again, different teachers, different systems, different lineages. Some would have you roll your tongue if you can. Some would have you kind of bite the tip of your tongue and breathe through the sides. Some would have you gently close the teeth. So, Shitkari typically is done as the alternative if you cannot roll your tongue. This one is taken breathing through the teeth, though I have also heard it taught as taking the tip of the tongue between the teeth. So, if you need that option, please find which one is more accessible for you right now. As again, this is an exploration, not a full compendium on pranayama. So we will begin, hands on the legs as we do. Find our slow, even 3-part breath. Now, these are the techniques where we breathe through the mouth. So, if you are already too chilly, if it is in a cold or overly air-conditioned environment, or if you're unsure of the cleanliness of this environment, perhaps if you are on an airplane, do not take this type of breathing as it is already dry, already often too cooled, and the air quality may be questionable. When we breathe through the nose, all of our lovely little nose hairs act as filters. When we breathe through the mouth, we don't have those filters. So be aware of your environment and how clean and healthy it is for you to breathe through the mouth without filter. Please roll the tongue if you're able, or touch the ends of the teeth together. Breathe through the slight spaces in your teeth. Or take the tip of the tongue. Rather than thinking of biting it, think of leaving a little space between the teeth and begin to push the tongue just barely through the teeth. We will inhale through these spaces. Close the mouth, exhale through the nose, please. Inhale through these spaces. Exhale through the nose. Inhale through these spaces. Exhale through the nose. Please continue unless you already feel dry, unless you feel too cool. If this is uncomfortable, please pause, return to our 1-to-1 breath. And please blink the eyes back open. So probably you feel that cooling sensation around the tongue. Maybe as the air passed over it, this is where our general focus is during these types of breathing. Perhaps if you felt a little overheated, or if it's summer while you're watching this, or right now our springtime in Iowa is really quite warm and quite lovely. So maybe you do feel overall cooling through the whole body. These ones are typically done 2 to 5 minutes, as it is not a powerful or forceful breath. It can be done a little bit longer, but again, remembering that you can go too far in one direction. So going into where we notice subtle change, lasting change, but not too much change in that opposite direction. The second one I have for you today is quite different. Again, these ones are more manipulations with our senses, with how we're taking it through the mouth instead of the nose, not necessarily a muscular change with Kapalabhati or Bhastrika. This one is called Bhramari, or buzzing breath, or bumblebee breath. This one is going to be done humming. So we'll inhale through the nose, but we'll exhale as a hum. So typically, this would be done taking pointer fingers inside the ears, rotating so that the finger pads are in the same direction of the face. Fingernails are pointed in the direction behind you. This is the way that the fingers best fit in the ears. If you do not like doing this, you are welcome to take the fingers and put them on the flaps of the ears. I apologize. These little triangular shaped pads. I forget what they're called. And do it that way instead. There are also various mudras that you can take with this, one of them being closing those pads with the thumbs and resting the rest of the fingers on the forehead. So this is typically done to bring all of the senses in. Again, a removal of senses helps our focus. When we're not stimulated by sight, breathing is much more easier to focus on. When we're not stimulated by sound, or when we're so stimulated by our own central sound, the focus, the clarity becomes a lot more easier to take. And when let's see, I've done ears. When the sound is closed, yes. When we are making a sound ourselves, that helps ensnare us. Like we're taking a physical practice, that physical movement is one of the easiest ways to bring everything into our current space and time. Sound is a wonderful way to bring ourselves into current space and time. So let's try it. You're welcome to take any of these. Hand position, I've already said. The easiest one is definitely just closing your fingers with your ears. Closing your ears with your fingers, or placing your palms on your ears. So let us inhale gently. I will demonstrate first. You feel free to watch or join me right away. So if you have, wondering what Matt's thinking downstairs actually, but if you have pets, if you have other people in your current living situation, maybe just give them a heads up. You're about to make some noise. But like the rest of them, this is not supposed to be a loud, forceful hum, but creating that vibration around the nasal cavity with just your natural exhale. You might have noticed the breath was significantly longer, not unlike Ujjayi breath when we had a slight constriction in the throat. When we breathe through a gigantic Panera smoothie straw that you shouldn't be using straws, stop using straws, we get a lot more intake with a larger space. If you try to drink through a tiny little coffee straw, again, please stop using straws. But if we're breathing through a tiny space, it's going to take longer to get the same amount in. So closing the throat slightly with Ujjayi takes the breath longer. Closing the nasal passage slightly or humming out is going to make the breath last longer as well. So if you'd like, let's take 3 full breaths together. Or if, again, you find this practice dizzying, you're welcome to not. We'll take a gentle inhale together. Plug your ears. Please exhale through the nose. Once the exhale completes, release your hands to the legs for inhale. Inhale 1 full breath in between. Gentle inhale again, please, and we'll take our second round. After your next inhale, we'll take our third round. So obviously we cannot sustain an exhale for 2 minutes or so, or however long you'd like to attempt this practice. I did suggest that you take a full breath in between. In this case, a full breath was an inhale and exhale, and then our preemptive inhale. Typically, you could rest. You could take a couple rounds of alternate nostril breathing or one preferred direction of breathing in between if you'd like. But again, this is a wonderful centering, harmonizing, yet cooling and passive practice. It's not very heating. It really helps draw your awareness inwards. Very ideal for meditation, as we are removing senses, seeing what it's like to be without those just temporarily and by choice in order to be aware of how we could feel, or taking that awareness inwards instead of seeing all of the distractions that we could be gravitating towards. So give these ones a shot if you feel that they are appropriate for you. These ones are fine to be practiced maybe mid-morning, but that as they are more cooling, more pacifying, ideally when you wake up, you would want to be waking up, not winding down. But again, if you're doing these after an asana practice, maybe even a particularly heating or active asana practice, this can help bring us back down if we've gone, again, a little too far in one direction. So do let me know what you think. Please let me know if you have any questions. And I have a bonus day for you tomorrow. So check back for one more video.